Today is May 3rd, 2013. We are at the American Legion in Peoria, Illinois. My name is Cheryl Walker, and I am with the Illinois State Library, and we are interviewing Mr. Carroll Besing. Mr. Besing was born May 23rd, 1932, in Evansville, Indiana. Rose Liberty is the court reporter who is doing the transcriptions today. Mr. Besing, can you please tell us what branch of service you were in?
United States Air Force.
And what is your age?
My age? Well, right now I'm 80.
Okay. And what was your highest rank?
Major.
Major. So you were commissioned?
Yeah, partway through I was. I started out enlisted and then got commissioned through OCS.
Okay. So you enlisted in 1951?
Yes.
And you...
Commissioned 1953.
Okay, so did you make a career out of it?
Well, yes. I retired in 1992.
Okay. And were you were you in Korea?
No.
What? Okay.
I was never in any combat situation that whole time.
Okay. What battalion or unit were you in?
Well, and several over the years. And I was stationed, well, did my basic training at Lackland Air Force Base.
Mm-hmm.
And then went to Scott for Airborne Radio Mechanic School. And then in 53, I went back to Lackland for OCS to get my commission. I was commissioned second lieutenant December the 11th, 1953. I went to Keesler for communications and electronics officers, fundamentals. Then to Albuquerque, New Mexico for nuclear weapons project. And then in 55, I came back to Kansas City. It was Grandview Air Force Base then. And 56, I went to Beausejour Air Station, which is a little radar site 60 miles east of Winnipeg, Canada. And I spent 2 years there. Then came back to Richards Gabar then. They changed the name of the place. And I was there for the 50th Communication Squadron, was where I was assigned. And I was there until 1961, when they sent me to Washington, D.C. to go to language school to learn Spanish. And after 6 months in language school, I went to Rosas Air Station in Spain, which is about 100 miles north of Barcelona, right on the Mediterranean coast. And I was there from 61 to 64. Then back to Keesler for Communication Electronic Staff Officer course. I stayed there until 1967 when I got out of the military, active duty military, stayed in the reserves, and came here to go to work for Caterpillar. And I stayed in the reserves. I served as Air Force advisor to the Civil Air Patrol at Peoria Airport until I had my 20 good years of reserve time, and then they put me on a retired reserve list. And a few years later, when I turned 60 years old, they started paying me to do nothing.
So were you ever activated in the reserves?
No. I was what was considered an individual ready replacement. I was not assigned to any unit per se. All of my paperwork went through Denver Personnel Record Center, but I stayed here in Peoria.
So can I ask you, where was your favorite place to be stationed?
Probably Spain. We moved into an apartment over there and lived on the Spanish Riviera for a while. Walk out your back door to the apartment and you were on a 60-mile long natural sand beach with the Mediterranean Sea.
So what did you do when you were in Spain?
I was a communications officer. And part-time, when the radar officer left, I had his job and my job too for a while until we got a replacement. And we were, the radar site, excuse me, the radar site had surveillance out over the Mediterranean, and we had numerous occasions where we would pick up aircraft that were coming back from a run all the way across the Mediterranean. They would leave the U.S. airborne refuel a couple of times, get to their destination, turn around and come back, and we'd pick them up coming back. Our sister site down south of us would have them going out, and we'd pick them up coming back and guide them back to hook up with the tanker so they'd get enough gas to get home.
That was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there were a lot of interesting things over there.
What were some of the other things?
We had rigid radomes on our antennas to protect them from the weather, and had an anemometer sitting on top of it. Tell us how fast the wind was. Well, one day it was steady 120, gusting to 180 knots. Then it took leave of itself off the radome, so we didn't have one anymore. But we had, anytime it got over 100, we were stuck either up in the tech site or down below in the cantonment area because they wouldn't allow the vehicles to go up and down the road because the wind might blow them off.
Hmm. So, when you said it wouldn't allow, like what kind of vehicle?
Well, station wagons. They were taking the troops back and forth from one area to the other. See, with tech site was strictly the working area. The cantonment area, which was below, down the side of the mountain, about 700, 800 feet, was where everything else was. But when you're in the tech site, you were working. We did have supplies in there and cots in there in case we got caught up there and couldn't get back down. But when the wind got about 100 knots, they stopped the vehicular traffic because there was no guardrail on the road. And they were afraid it might blow one of them off the side and down the mountain with 4 or 5 people in it.
So how many times did you have to stay up there?
Oh, during a winter, probably once or twice every year. And we'd stay there for maybe 24 to 36 hours. We had rations up there and we had cots up there so we could survive without any problem.
And would it be, how many men would be up there?
Oh, totally there was probably 25 or 30 of us.
So would you work the whole time that you were up there?
Yeah. We would work 24 hours a day up there, and we'd split the shifts up so you didn't work more than 8 or 10 hours at a time. But we would, and of course, as the officers, we took advantage of that. We let the NCOs run it.
Now, was this a big Air Force base that was?
No, it was a radar site.
Okay.
We had about totally probably 120, 150 Americans, and we had about 200, 250 Spanish. We had 2 roles. We were to teach the Spanish Air Force how to run an air defense system, and we were there to protect the U.S. Air Force's assets that were there, like tankers and one thing or another that were stationed there at the big bases. Our support base was Zaragoza, Spain, which was about 150 miles away from us, 200 maybe. I sort of forget after all those years.
And how long were you stationed there?
About 2.5 years. We went over in November of '61, and we came back in May of '64.
And you say we.
My family.
Okay. And who did that include?
Well, my wife and my 3 little children. In fact, my son had his first birthday over there. Okay, got to shut off.
Did your children participate in any type of schooling over there?
Yeah, they had an American school. They had American teachers that came over there to teach their classes, and the children all became very fluent in Spanish. Of course, I had the opportunity. My wife had the opportunity to go to language school before we went over there. Spent 6 months in D.C., 5 days a week. 3 students and 1 instructor, 6 hours a day to learn Spanish. And the owner of the school, since we were going to Spain and he was Spanish, ran classes at no cost to the Air Force for our wives 2 nights a week for the whole period of time so that they could learn what he called kitchen Spanish, what they needed to get by with the maids and those and go grocery shopping or whatever. So they had enough knowledge of the Spanish language to do that.
Have you ever been back over there since you were
Oh,
stationed there?
yes. 2 or 3 times.
Do you still have friends over stationed there?
Uh,
Or
well, yeah, but we annually have a reunion. Last year, well, in September, I think it was the last year, we had our reunion in Colorado Springs because one of the people that was stationed with us over there owned a restaurant in Colorado Springs, and he was celebrating 50 years of business. So we went out to help him celebrate.
that's wonderful.
And I think it was 2000, I think it was, or 2001. We went over, and the Spaniards were running the site at that time, and the Spanish commander invited us up to tour the site and fed us lunch and all. And we had a good time.
Now, did you, so you went out into the civilian community,
Hmm.
and I'm assuming you must have had some type of servant or
Yeah, we had
household help.
a maid who worked 40 hours a week, and then would come back and babysit at night if we needed her.
Mhm.
And it cost us $20 a week.
And so you didn't live on post. There was no housing on post.
Well, there was housing, but about 6, 8 months before I came home, I finally got far enough up on the list that I got into the base quarters. But they weren't as nice as some of the things we had before because they weren't on the beach. But it was nice housing.
And did you collect a lot of things when you were in Spain?
We collected some when we were there. We have a coffee table that we brought back with us, and a screen, wrought iron screen that was over there, a couple of chairs and stuff like that. But we got bitten by the bug, and we started collecting Yadro figurines, and we can have a lot. I have a lot of them sitting around the house right now. Some of them very expensive. It's a good investment. One of the early ones that we bought after we got back, after we settled in Peoria, was a little annual figurine that he put out. We paid $95 for him. The last time I heard, one was sold on auction for $4,500. So we got into the habit of collecting those, and we got a whole bunch of them.
So, okay, you said you were stationed south of Canada?
Oh, in Canada, in the
In
southern
Canada.
part of Canada, it was just east of Winnipeg, just above the Canadian highway that went across.
Hmm.
We were probably 30 miles north of the American-Canada border, but had to drive 90 miles to get there.
Okay, and how come that was?
Well, there was no place to cross where we were, so we had to go back to Winnipeg, which was 60 miles away, and then come 30 miles south to get to a crossing point.
Hmm. And how long were you stationed there?
2 years.
And you went there twice?
No,
No,
just
just
once.
once.
Just 2 years, just 1 2 year stint. Then we came back to Richards Gabar Air Force Base in Kansas City, and stayed there till I went to Spain.
Mhm.
So we came back in 58 and I left in 61.
Now, when you joined the Air Force, was your plan to become a commissioned officer, or when you enlisted, or
I didn't really have a plan when I enlisted, but I met a young lady out there who talked me into doing it. And about a week after I graduated from OCS, we got married.
so it was your future wife that
Mhm.
talked? Was she in the Air Force?
No, no, she had no real ties to the military at all. She had a brother that had been in the Army in World War II, but she had, other than that, and he just did what he had to do.
Mm-hmm.
Her dad was in the Navy in World War One, stationed with a couple of guys you have heard of, I'm sure. One Walt Disney and the other one is Joyce Hall. And he made a comment often. Of course, in World War One, you didn't have television and radios or any of that kind of stuff in the barracks. So those two guys would get up and entertain their friends, and had all kinds of pictures they had drawn and everything else. He said he wished he'd held on to some of those.
I can imagine. Was your wife from Illinois?
No, she was from Kansas City.
Now, how many children did you have?
3, 2 girls and a boy. And the oldest one is a college professor. Her younger sister is lab information director for a hospital here. And my son is out in Aurora, Colorado. And the last I knew, he was working, installing security systems on new buildings.
Now, you say that you have a reunion every year,
Mm-hmm.
and is that just with officers, or is
No,
it with the whole?
I'm usually probably the only officer that shows up. And but it covers the whole group.
And how many are there?
Oh, I think there was about 30 of us that showed up out in Colorado Springs. The list has 100 and some people on it that are still alive. A number of them have passed on. But we've been in San Antonio. 2 years ago, we were in Las Vegas for a reunion. That was fun. We've been to San Antonio a couple of times. There's talk this year of going to Nashville, because one of the guys lives close to Nashville. It would be nice to, he's instigator in most of those, so it would be nice to go to his territory. It'd be a whole lot closer too.
Have you ever visited any of the Air Force bases that you were stationed at?
Mm-hmm. I've been on several of them.
Yeah.
Just about 3 weeks ago, I was down Scott Air Force Base. I was stationed there twice.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been back on Keesler a couple of times. And I was stationed there 2 different occasions. I'm trying to think where else. I've been to Lackland when we had a reunion in San Antonio. So yeah, I've been back to a number of them.
And how have they changed?
Very much. Of course, you realize it's been, 40 years ago, 50 years ago that I was doing that, and they've upgraded them considerably. In fact, with Scott, what used to be the edge of the base is now in the middle of it, because they built a commissary and a PX and government quarters and everything that weren't there when I was there. We were living in World War II buildings.
Now, do you take advantage of the services, the commissary? Do you shop at the commissary still?
Occasionally. It's a long way to go. It's about a 3-hour drive down there, and it's a long way to go to save a buck or two. It takes a lot of, So when you go, we do more to PX than we do to commissary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I'll also take advantage of the PX online.
They have a PX online now.
Uh-huh. Army Air Force Exchange Service, AFES, yeah. And you can log on, and the advantage of that is that there's no sales tax and there's no shipping charge. So that's a nice little convenience.
Now, did any of your children go into the service?
No. Well, my son did. He was in the Navy for about 10 years, and then got caught on a random drug test, and they booted him out.
Do you think that if a young person came to you today and said, "I'm thinking about joining the service," would you?
Would depend on the individual.
Mhm.
I am, as a Reserve Officer Association group here, we have liaison with all the junior ROTC units in town. And I happen to be liaison to the Air Force unit at Limestone High School. And I talk to them about it, but I don't try to paint a real rosy picture because it's not. And the thing is that a lot of people say that we should reinstate the draft. I'm totally against it because draftees would not have the desire to do the job that the people who enlist do. And they wouldn't be able to do it. The next thing you know, we'd be booting a bunch of them out for whatever reason because they weren't able to do the job. A young person going into the military today has to have the desire to do it because it's very rigorous training and very difficult for them to get through. And they really have to have the desire to do it in order to become a good soldier, sailor, marine, or whatever service they go into. And if you have draftees in there, you don't have that desire.
So you feel the volunteer army is the best for the United States?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Out of the service, out of your military time, what is the one or what are the things that you feel benefited you the most?
Well, getting my college education. And the reason I got off of active duty in 1967 was they told me I was not promotable because I didn't have a college degree. I now have a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and an MBA. I got the Bachelor of Science from University of Southern Mississippi, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I get the MBA from Bradley.
Did you use the GI Bill?
Yes. And then also Caterpillar paid part of it when I was going to Bradley.
So, when did you go to Bradley?
1968, I guess it was, or 71, to get my MBA. Night school. Most of my college education came in night school.
The GI Bill back when you used it compared to today, that it has changed the way
yes.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's changed for the better?
I don't really know. I'm not that familiar with what the things are today. Mine was the Korean GI Bill, and they paid me pretty well to go to school. In particular, I was going to school at Bradley. Between what the Air Force paid me and what Caterpillar paid me, I actually made money going to school. I don't know what the new one is. I'm not that familiar with it, so I wouldn't be in any position to judge.
Did you use any other benefits, veteran benefits?
Not really, because, well, the one thing that I've got now being retired, I have TRICARE for Life for my Medicare supplement, which costs me nothing, which covers all my medical expenses that Medicare doesn't. And then and drugs. That's all covered with it. So yeah, I'm using those benefits. But I talked to the people at the VA, and they said, "Well, you got Caterpillar insurance. You've got TRICARE for life. You're better off that way than you would be trying to get under the VA because I'd have to give up some of it. So I don't get anything from the VA. I know a lot of people do, but I don't."
You belong to the American Legion, and do you belong to any other veteran organizations?
Well, the Reserve Officers Association, Military Officers of America Association, and I guess that's about it.
You didn't receive any medals?
No, nothing, the good conduct medal and those kind of things, but nothing in the Air Reserve medal for how many years you've been in. I got a National Defense Service medal that everybody gets, including my grandson has one now. He's in the Air Force.
Is he?
Yep, the Air Force Academy graduate.
Out in Colorado.
Yeah, that's where it was, but he's currently stationed in Florida. He's a pilot, Air Force Special Operations. He's been deployed 5 times. We don't know where he was, except for the first one. The first one, he brought me back. He brought me back a flag with a certificate of authenticity that was flown on a combat mission over Afghanistan, and he signed. We know where to send his snail mail. His mother, excuse me, his mother sends him packages when he's gone, and we know where to send it. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's there. He's got one of those jobs. He says he goes home, tells his wife, "I'm leaving. Can't tell you where I'm going or how long I'll be gone. When I get back, I can't tell you where I've been because if I did, I'd have to shoot you."
I bet you're pretty proud of him, aren't you?
Oh yeah. He just became a father here about a month ago, March 13th.
So is that your first great grandchild?
Nope, second one. His older brother has a little girl who's 18 months old.
So what else about your military service did you enjoy?
Well, I think a lot of it was the camaraderie that we developed between people when we were stationed. I still get Christmas cards from people that I was stationed with. As I say, the unit, I just got a new roster here a week ago with names and addresses and phone numbers and email addresses and all that kind of stuff, and a list of the people that are deceased and when. And that list is getting to be as long as the living list is.
Can I ask you, do they still have officer benefits of that you can go to any base and stay in?
That's not just officer.
That's any
That's
right,
any retired military can do that. And we've used it a few times.
And that's pretty nice.
My oldest daughter was in a project at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, and we went out to visit her, and she didn't have room for us in their place, so they put us up on the base.
Sleeping quarters. I was wondering if they still did that, or if that was.
There still is a space available capability also, but it's greatly reduced because they don't have as many airplanes going that aren't fully loaded. But I took advantage of that a few times too.
What about having to have moved your family so many times? Did that bother your family?
Well, I don't think it does. I think it helps. When we moved into the house that I'm living in now, we had been married 18 years, and it was the 18th place we'd lived. Don't think it hurt my girls at all, because the oldest one is a PhD. She was in 7th grade. She was in 7 different schools. Her her sister was a year behind her, so she was on 6 different schools. My son moved around with us too, so he was in a lot of different schools, but it didn't seem to make, in fact, it got them to where they could develop friendships fairly easily. And a lot of them they still have today. And it's difficult, yes. And the other thing that you get into is that it gets real difficult to have pets because you move from state to state or country to country and all the rules and regulations. So we never did have a pet. But you learn to live with it, just like anything else.
Did you have one person that you made a friendship with in the military that you have kept that, that you could say was your best friend?
No, I don't know about best friend because that takes a lot of work. But there's a couple that are staying out in Kansas, someplace, Wichita, I think, that I get emails from about every day. And there's one down in Alabama that I get emails from about every day. And then there's just a couple of others that way. We keep in contact with email from people we were stationed with.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, it was a good life. We enjoyed it. We enjoyed the travel and meeting the different people and the different cultures that you get involved in. And if anybody's interested in going to the military, I would highly recommend it if they were motivated to do it.
Well, I'd like to take this time and thank you. Thank you for the time that you served our country
You're welcome.
and for the loyalty that you gave our country.
You're welcome.
And I appreciate the time you gave to me today
I'm glad to
and
do it.
sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.